Welcome to the Reflect On podcast, where we embark on inspiring conversations filled with truth, vulnerability, and, well, anything else that'll help us learn, grow, and live better lives. I'm your host, Kevin P. Murphy. Thank you so much for embarking on this reflection journey with me today. Now let's get right into it. This episode is with Stephanie Iannacchino. Stephanie grew up dreaming about photography while being inspired by her entrepreneurial parents who were operating in the industry. Naturally, the pressures of societal success measurements drew Steph into the corporate world before she decided to go all in on her fears and pursue a photography journey of her own. While hearing about that journey, we discussed the fear of failure and how it manifests into the ignorance of the childhood self. Steph reflects on where her artistry was truly born and how to keep it alive with a uniquely wonderful tradition that's her own. But whether it's a tear-inducing experience while traveling the world or the in-between moments of people's lives that Steph is trying to capture, she admits that the battle of authenticity and respecting your dreams is a never-ending one. And let's be honest, that word, authenticity, is one that's thrown around a lot. Steph unpacks her methodology in regards to how to engage in social media in a way that breeds authenticity rather than the other way around. Her story is one where she left the cushy world and took that leap of faith and didn't know what lay on the other side. So whether it's going all in on one's dreams or the realities behind that, what authenticity means for art and for life, the interconnectedness of our world, and so much more. Stephanie's flair and energy is insurmountable in a beautiful way, and her story is one that inspired me amazingly, and I hope it does for you as well. So sit back, engage, enjoy this episode. As always, thank you for listening, and here's the episode with Stephanie Iannacchino. Okay, so Stephanie Iannacchino, did I get that right?
You did. Good job.
Steph Iannacchino, so great to be in front of you, to speak with you. Thank you for being here. I want to start before we jump into anything with a story, okay? And it was the first time we met. We were just talking about this a little bit off air, but we actually hadn't been formally introduced yet. But basically, I was watching one of my good friends get married, and it was, without a doubt, as far as I can remember, the worst rainstorm I've ever witnessed in my adult life, like by far. We were all sheltered under basically a deck, and you were absolutely soaked, grocery bag over your head, another grocery bag over the camera, pointing and shooting. And I saw the end result of the photos. They were obviously fantastic. The reason I tell that story, Steph, to start is because it wasn't just about the dedication that I saw there to you, your art, but it was the love for what you do. It could have been, it almost seems like it could have been hailing and you would have been out there doing the same, or snowing or anything like that. I just share that with the intention of expressing how appreciative I am for you and how admirable I am of you and your art and what you do. I want to start, though, we were talking as well about your transition, because you, correct me if I'm wrong, graduated school about almost 10 years ago now. You went into that corporate world, if you will, quote unquote, and you made the transition, was it around 2020?
December 2020. That's when I made that, I guess you can say, that leap.
Yeah, and you were mentioning that as well earlier. But I want to focus a little bit more on those years to start. How did you know? Was it like an epiphany? I think when we look for these things and saying, I'm going all in, or I'm going to try this, if it's an entrepreneurial mindset, for you, it was photography. But how did you know that it was the moment you were going to go all in and take that lead?
I think for me to really answer this question, I got to give you like a little backstory, okay?
Please.
So growing up, my dad was like my superhero, okay? Still is, honestly, stand-up guy. He was a photographer. And he owned a picture framing business. And I wanted to grow up and be just like my dad. That was what I wanted to do. Like, if anyone asked me what I wanted to do when I grow up, I wanted to be a photographer and I wanted to frame pictures. And that was my life story up until, like, even in my grade 8 yearbook, when it says in 10 years, what do you want to do? It says, be a photographer. And I think that was like my whole, and I was like that girl in high school that was in the photography club and I was doing like photos with my friends. And then, like what you said, like you kind of grow up a little bit. My grades were really good in high school, and they were like, you should go to university. And at the time, I was like on track to get a rowing scholarship, which I did in the States. You can't take photography in university, right? So, like, life just kind of like pulled me away from that like childhood dream that I had. So I did it. I went to university, I got my scholarship, I spent 6 years in school, got a government job, and I was like on track for this big life that honestly, looking at it now, was everyone else's kind of way of bringing me down this path. And it wasn't until I was like in the middle of COVID and I was like doing photography a little bit on the side and I was ready and I always told people like never plan on quitting my job. I love doing them both. And it was during COVID when the world shut down. I was working at the hospital at the time, working communications in a hospital. There's no way I'm getting laid off work, right? And all my friends, all my family were working. They were not working, and I was at in my room working from home, hating every second of it. And it was during that time, during this lockdown, and like during this whole time of like no one knew what the hell was going on, where I really started to like question what I wanted to do with my life. And that seems so cliche now that we look back on it. Like this big life world moment happened and I had this awakening. But it was during that time when I was working so much at a job that I was really not happy in, and everyone else was like off. The life is too short. Like what am I doing? Right. And it really was a flip of a switch kind of moment for me.
Wow.
I tell you that like I woke up one day and I told my parents, I was like, I'm quitting my job tomorrow. They were like, you're going senile. You need a therapist. Because they were like, with COVID and everything, they just like didn't think I was well. And like it was in that moment when I totally decided I need to do this or else I'm gonna grow up with a whole bunch of regrets. And it was during that time I literally walked in the next day. I wrote out my letter of resignation and I handed it to my boss. And it's been a freaking wild ride since that moment, honestly. So, like, kind of tying back into the question, it wasn't like this transition of one thing to another. For me, it was like, this is what I really always wanted to do. This was like 13-year-old Steph being reborn into the world and me finally having the courage to be like, this is what I want to do. And I'm not waiting any longer to go do it. In my yearbook, it said in 10 years. I think it actually took me 13, if you say. And that was not 3 years too long. I value every step that I had up until that point. But it just like brought me back to like 13-year-old me ready to follow this crazy dream that I had. And it's, like I said, it's been a wild ride, but it's really worked out for me so far.
That's an amazing story. I want to hear about that wild ride a little bit more in a moment, but you mentioned a couple of things there that was so fantastic. So one was you said the word a couple of times, and it was the word cliche. I honestly think I use that word, and a lot of us use that word sometimes as a barrier to satisfy the stigma of fears of some things that are actually true in life. And I think it's so beautiful that you had this moment, this almost like picturesque moment. And I'm curious as you were saying it, do you think you would have been able to transition and progress as well as you have had you not actually drawn up that resignation letter and done it the very next day?
I think it was one of those moments where it was like subconsciously in my mind. And it's funny because like I said, when I used to tell people, even when I was working that job, like I have zero intentions on quitting my job. I would tell brides that when I was on my lunch hour booking them for their weddings. I was like, listen, this is a side. When I booked Katie and Drew's wedding, where we have connected before, I was working my government job, and I remember calling Katie on my lunch hour. I remember telling them, like, listen, this is something I do on the side. I have love for both jobs. And it was like, again, like this voice that like I was trying to believe, and I was saying these things out loud, but I think subconsciously I deep down always knew that this is kind of what I wanted to do. And it really was that fear of what if I take this leap and not be successful, and kind of tying back to the story of like my dad was a photographer, did picture framing. My mom is also a small business owner, and they just like totally understand the struggles of what comes with being a small business owner, right? And for them, I went to university, I got a government job right out of university. I got benefits, pension, paid vacation, things that they never ever could have dreamed of, where they were like, you're crazy to leave this. Like, you're crazy to, this is something that we always wanted. And you want to kind of be like the peasants, like work hard for your dollar, like work day and night. So it was kind of just, it really was that. And not to say that my parents weren't supportive, like they were very supportive. They just knew the other side of it, where they had this daughter, right, that was like doing so many great things in the corporate world. And so badly, I was like, no, I literally just want to be like my parents and own small businesses and do my own thing and have that freedom, which I did not get when I was working government. So that was kind of like the balance between that and that fear of failure and not the fear of being successful. Like it really was just taking that leap of faith that, like, I'm literally going from one direction and I'm going to go completely in the other way. And just like having faith and support. When I tell you, when I first told my parents, they weren't totally on board with the plan. But I think once I finally said those words out loud and I started to like really come out of my shell about it, I totally started to believe in myself and the words that I was saying. It was like, no, this is for me. I'm doing this. Don't care what anyone else says at this point. I made the decision myself, wrote the letter, gave it to my boss, and my boss was like, like they were caught so off guard because again, up until that point, I loved my job. I loved working and doing the things that I was doing at my job. And it was just one day, but subconsciously, I think it was always in the back of my mind.
Do you think you actually loved your job at those moments too, or were you selling yourself a potential fallacy based on what you just mentioned?
I think I confused my skill and my skill set for the job and the fact that I was good at my job, confused with this was something I was supposed to do. And I think that's kind of how I ended up in that spot. Just like taking the path that I was and in university and had good grades, I was like, okay, I'm good at it, so I should be doing this. Like I said, I think all those moments that I took and all the jobs that I had up until that point really did shape me as a business owner, and it gave me that other lens that I think a lot of creatives don't have, and it really sets me apart of like just like knowing how to like run a business, knowing how to market myself because I worked in comms. So like marketing myself and like doing all these things in the business world, and then how it transitioned into me being a small business owner really, like I said, shaped me, and it gave me this running start, which made me blow out of the gate so fast. Like I went from like this very, very small photography business to this crazy wedding photography business that I didn't even expect to happen. And it was like that snowball effect. And it was just like, again, all those skill sets and all that life experience that I had really, it was able to shape me into that kind of like that path. And I don't know if I would have had the same kind of success if I did it right out of high school, honestly, or right out of college. It happened for a reason the way it happened, and I'm way more skilled in so many other things that I needed to succeed. And I don't think I would have got that just being a photographer, like, because there's so much more to being a business owner than just your skill set, right? There's so many layers.
It's so interesting because it's almost as if at the same time you're building that resistance, that entrance, that emergence into the corporate world, vis-a-vis, or quote unquote. At the same time you were building the resistance and resisting almost what your initial dreams were, you're also building the life experience that acted as such a big and valuable catalyst at the same time. We'll say the word cliche again to say you are the sum of all your decisions now. Like that's kind of what it seems like in your story in a beautiful way. And it's funny because that story, Steph, is one where anyone who's ever been to therapy or engaged in therapy would know that one of the things it's almost a compulsory part of therapy that you have to understand and go into your childhood self. And it's interesting because I see the moments of you ripping the band-aid off, so to speak, and making that transition as during 2020, all those culminations, it's almost as if you shut the door on your childhood self for a little bit, but then you actually opened up and your younger self was saying, here I am, grade 8 self, these are my dreams. Anything before that, I want to be like my father, like my parents. I see them being happy. I want to be that happy too in my own way. And you just said yes to your childhood self is almost what it was like. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly. And like it really does make me like a little emotional thinking about it, because that's exactly what it was. And kind of what you were saying before when you were talking about your podcast and you're just like, this is totally what I was meant to do. Like that's the feeling that you get when you're just like you're in it and it comes so naturally to you. You're like, this is totally what I was made to do. And the more I do it, the more, again, even when talking about when we briefly talked about my trip, this trip to Africa and being in a situation that I've never been in before, and being able to make art out of it. What a beautiful thing. And it just like, again, I look at it, I'm like, there was so many times when I questioned my skill set, because I was so scared to take that leap. And I thought, there's so many other photographers, like I don't have anything else to offer that no one else does. But the truth is, I have so much to offer, right? Like I have so much to offer. I have this crazy eye that literally can take nothing and make it into something beautiful. And there was so many times when I shoved that all in my back pocket because I was so scared. I was so scared of failing, and I was scared of disappointing my friends and my family and like those people that believed in me. And it really was just my little childhood dream just to do this. This was it. And I feel like every day that goes by, I'm like, this is it. This is what I was meant to do. And I do not take one day for granted, honestly.
Throwing another cliche here, and for a
Yeah.
moment,
I love that
the
word. Just leave
big,
that. Let's
yeah,
do my own
let's
podcast.
just
Yeah.
normalize it, right?
Yeah.
You talk about fear of failure, and perhaps the biggest fear of failure that we don't even know we have, a lot of us, is not going all in on something like that, not understanding the extra levels that we could get to once we do go all in. Like I think of it as a room of 100 doors in front of you, and when you're working a certain job and not being honest with yourself and not reflecting on what you truly want to accomplish in this life. And it doesn't have to just be in the corporate white collar or anything like that world, or even just in career pursuance, but it can be in relationships, it can be in your health, whatever it is. Think of it as 100 doors in front of you, and only 50 to 60 of them, if that, are open.
Yep.
Until you actually understand and go to the other side. And it's that grass is always greener, or that consideration of grass is greener. But the fact is that you don't know what the color of the grass is regardless if you don't jump over the fence.
Honestly. And kind of like back to what you were just saying, like I felt, yeah, there was 50 doors open, and then I would open 51 doors. And then I was like, okay, and then this one, and then this one. And then it's just, you just keep opening and you just start realizing the possibilities of what you're able to do. And then this is it. Like I can do this. And it was just like, I can do this and I have the confidence. And I feel like now that I finally made that leap, I was like, let's just open all these doors, right? Like, what do I got to lose at this point? All hands in deck. And like, I know we're talking about like my life and my career moment, but that mentality has transcended over into like different parts. Again, like booking that trip to Africa, like we knew it was going to be very expensive. We knew like, but we're like, F it, let's do it. Why not? Right? Like we're young ones. We don't know what is going to happen in a couple years. And I've taken that spontaneity and just like applied it to things in my life that I'm not sure about or on the fence about. And I'm like, F it, let's do it. And it's been great. And yeah, you fall on your face sometimes, spend a little bit more money than you expected in Africa, right? But again, like after it happens, you're like, lessons learned, moving on. Lessons learned, moving on, and you get a really great experience or bad experience, but you can learn from it, right? So not having that fear of being able to do things and having things to hold you back. And it's really great. And I really wish that other people had that feeling that I have in my soul when I talk about this stuff, because it's life changing. It's really life changing.
Well, I mean, you reflecting on it is also infectious. So it's a beautiful thing that you're doing it, Steph. And I'm going to insert a shameless plug for you here because you are by trade, what dare we say now, a wedding photographer and family photographer. But good grief, I just saw some of your, like, as I was mentioning to you, your wildlife photography, and it was out of this world. So you have a lot of paths that you could continue to take in front of you in an amazing way. And I want to actually zero in a little bit more on that when you're actually shooting. I was having a conversation recently with Imran, his name is Imran Texera, and he's a very successful entrepreneurial chef and an artist in his craft in such a beautiful way. And one of the things we were talking about was that authenticity of art. So the trade-off of when you're actually in the moments, and what he portrayed, and I've learned from him and a lot of other sources, is when you're actually trying to perform the art for an audience, sometimes it actually isn't as effective as you'd want it to be. It's like writing a book and writing a novel, and you're thinking about, oh, is this going to be on a bestseller list, or how successful is this going to be? All of that energy is actually taken off you doing the thing. So I'm curious with your view on this for photography, especially in the world we live in now, where there's so much, dare I say, inauthenticity in the social media realm and things like that. How do you distill that when you're actually in the mode and you're shooting, thinking, like, do you have thoughts of, okay, this is going to look great so much? Or do you think that, okay, this is just a beautiful moment, I'm going to point and shoot? Is it both of those? How does it conflict? How do you digest that? What happens to you in your craft and your art in the real time moments?
And this also, when I think about how when I had that security of my job, and I was doing photography, I guess you could say for fun, I really went into the craft being like, I'm doing this for fun and I'm going to do this my way. So wedding photography traditionally, like when people think about wedding photography, they think about like those really staged shots, moms doing up the dress and the bride's looking in the back. And when I started this whole journey, I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. And I kind of just want to like capture weddings just as they happen. And because I didn't have the pressure of forming myself into the industry because I thought I was just doing it as a side hobby, I was really able to develop my own style, which in turn really made me stand out from every other photographer in Niagara that was doing it the other way. And again, pulling from that past experience of working in communications and marketing, I was able to like take this one little difference and turn it into my superpower when it came to like booking clients, setting myself apart, and defining my art. So when I walk into a wedding day, I have zero expectations or zero thoughts. When I started my journey as a photographer, it was really me with my camera traveling to foreign countries. And I was like, I'm going to capture just what I see. because I wanted to remember how the country felt and what I saw, and not like these pretty Instagram photos. Very much like a documentary style approach, of just like snapping pictures that I thought was cool. And that transitioned into exactly how I go and shoot a wedding day. I show up on the wedding day, everyone's running around like crazy, and here I am in the middle of the chaos trying to find these little pockets of authenticity and beauty that honestly cannot be recreated. And I think that's where, again, really sets me apart, because no matter what you do in the world, people can tell if a photo is fake or not. And that's the truth behind it. And that is, again, my superpower, to be able to freeze time and people be like, that happened for a split second. How did you even catch that? Right. And it's like, that's just how I trained my mind to think. And that all goes back into, again, these steps that I took on the way here to like really shape my art. And now I go into that wedding day and sorry, my couples and the people around me, they totally trust that and I walk into the wedding day and they know I'm just going to be doing my thing with zero expectations of what there is to do. There obviously are some times, and you have some couples that see like, I really want this shot, like I saw it on Instagram, and people really lose sight of sometimes what your wedding day is supposed to mean. It's really not a big photo shoot, and sometimes I feel like that's when I first started, that's what it was. It was a big photo shoot for you to like just take a whole bunch of pretty pictures, and there's so much more that goes into a wedding day that is not about that, right? It's all about the people in the room and the feelings and the connections that you have, and being able to capture that artfully, which again is so hard to explain without showing imagery. But it really is that idea of capturing a feeling and doing it in a way that is nice to the eye. Yeah, and that's kind of, and when you say talk about like shaping your art and having the industry take you into one way, it's just being able to just like trust yourself and putting your soul into something and just trusting that it's going to turn out. And I know that's like not the right answer, but it's just totally believing in your eye and what you see, and also understanding human behavior and like what's going to happen. You're able to imagine these moments and what's going to happen next, and you can kind of anticipate it, but it's just trusting your eye and hoping that it turns out for the best. And honestly, it does, because when you believe that something is going to happen, it's going to happen, and you can shape it and take that picture and make something beautiful, even though it's something so simple. It's so easy to like go down that path where the industry is telling you to do one thing. But to tie back on the rest of the conversations, because I started this out as just doing it for fun, I was like, I don't care. I don't need to do it that way. I'm going to just do it my way. And those couple people that hire me a year, that's all I wanted at the time, right? I was like, oh my God, I have 2 weddings this summer. Like, that's awesome, right? And now looking, I'm like booking in 2026 already. Like I'm booking 2 years in advance. And it's just because all those things came together, and I was able to like hone in on my craft, market myself accordingly, and like set myself apart. And again, all those things that are working really now happened because of the way my journey kind of started.
It's so interesting because a lot of people think when they try to look at someone that's successful in some of the general fields. So let's continue on the photography. If I looked at a successful photographer, I might try to study exactly how they're doing it, right? And I think that's like something you're hovering on, Steph, that's so important, is that there's a dance there. There's a dance that's always in conflict. To say it's I'm always truly authentic or I'm always copying someone, that just doesn't really gel with me in that sense. What I mean by it is that I've started to learn that you being as much in your soul in those moments that you were talking about before, But if you're looking at other work or you're either studying anything else, you're doing so with the intention of just not copying, but bringing in more into a creative realm and be open in that sense, right? And by the way, for those anyone that's listening and they don't actually believe anything that Steph just said or believe something that Steph just said, I'm going to read a quote right from her website, which is, "I'm not the photographer who will take a photo of your wedding invitation covered in a ribbon or one who makes you hold still for a photo. I am the kind of photographer who captures the beautiful in between moments you share with the ones you love most." I've witnessed that truthfully multiple times, so I can vouch for it. But what's your opinion, sort of continuing on this path? What's your opinion on the realm of inauthenticity that's been built, so to speak, when you think about something like social media? How do you ballast against that challenge? Because that's obviously a pressure where if someone wants to drive you in that path, whether it's the industry, a certain couple, or the algorithms on social media, for some examples, how do you ballast against that, speaking to the authenticity that you just mentioned?
And I have like the best answer for this. And this is something I really caught on early in my career. It's so easy with the way social media is to compare yourself and to like see these trends that are happening and being able to follow those trends. I have like this daytime tradition before a wedding day that I started probably 2 years ago. I definitely got myself caught in that mess, right? Like looking at Instagram, screenshotting, this is cool, and I'm gonna reflect that into my wedding today. And I quickly realized that this is exactly everything that I was like building. And it wasn't until I found these old picture books at the thrift store, and they were literally just like old photographs, well-known photographs of like just like people in everyday life. And I have like a collection of half a dozen of these books. Before wedding day, I'll sit down and instead of going on Instagram, I'll grab one of these books and I'll just like flip through the pages. And I know it seems so cheesy. The inspiration that I get from looking at these everyday photos of people just enjoying their life and just there's so much imperfection into what's going on in the photo. That inspires me. When you're talking about something being authentic, when I look at these photos on Instagram and when I look at these photo books from like 20 years ago, like the difference in where we started and like where it's going, and I really do have to pull myself away from that and focus on like this is the imagery I want to capture. Like I look at these photos and I see so much life. There's just contagious energy and there's dirt, there's a little girl running through a field with a dirty dress on, jumping through dandelions. Again, there's something so true to that where you can see it and you're like, this was not a staged photo. And again, it's so easy to pick that out in a field of photographs. Like I feel like I'd be the best person to do that. Put a million photographs in front of me and I could tell you which ones were staged or not. And pulling myself away from that and really just like bringing myself back into like just what I want to do and how I want to do it is the way to battle that. And it's funny because the more I absorb myself into these old photo books, the more I start seeing resemblance into my own work subconsciously. I'll look at these photos a million, like hundreds of times. It inspires you in a different way. Like, oh, I saw something like that, and I'm gonna like apply it to like what I'm doing now. And it really brings inspiration in a total different way, and not just this is a cool photo trend that I see on Instagram that I want to do. It's pulling from like the greats of the greats and like these photos that probably just they're printed in books and how much it inspires me and how much like this is exactly how I look at this book, looking at these people that I don't even know and the feelings I get. That's it. That's exactly what I want to deliver to my clients. Especially if they know the people and they were there in those moments, how powerful that would be, right? You got to get yourself out of that rat race of chasing this dream on Instagram. Instagram is a fantastic tool. It's how I get a lot of my clients. It's how I'm able to connect with a lot of people on a lot of different levels, but it could be very toxic to a creative in this day and age.
Very beautiful stories there. I absolutely love that story about the photo books. So a couple things. Number one, it's another notch on the belt of, when you're focusing on all the realms of how things look or how they're perceived for the outside world, it takes away the beauty of the art you're actually trying to perform, right? Number one. The second thing too is it's a very salient experience with Instagram and with photos and how people look and in authenticity versus authenticity. I know those words are thrown around a lot these days, but your stories that you just shared there, Steph, they highlight ones, in my opinion, that really bleed into the realms of life. What I mean by that, just like you almost said your career bled into the realm of your other lives, or the other realms of your life, rather, if you think about your life as like the Instagram and all the, or the whatever forces they may be, right? The social media in general, all of those are pressures that are seeking into this identity that society wants us to form. Society wants to be formed for us, or rather for society in almost a selfish way. It's not to say we should necessarily ignore those and not think in absolution like it's the in or out group necessarily, in my opinion, right? But what you're highlighting is that these forces are so powerful. And until we actually take the time to pause, in my opinion, and reflect on and admit to how much, like I very much agree with you, I absolutely am victim to those things, those forces that are so powerful in our everyday lives now, the technological ones. But there's forces going around in that nature in all forms and avenues and seasons of your life. And if you don't take the time to actually understand what they are, admit to yourself how they're changing and evolving who you are as a human being, you'll never be able to actually look at and be back to that authentic self that you maybe are actually seeking in the first place.
And to kind of go on to your point, like I'm very selective about what photos I share on my Instagram. If you look, there's not a lot of posed photos, and I do that intentionally, right? The photos in the photo book that I look at and I'm like, this photo gives me life. It's like when I look at a wedding gallery and I'm looking at what ones I'm about to share on Instagram, I think I'm like, can this photo ever be recreated again? And that's something that I look for. And I'm like, if I look at this wedding, if I take this photo and I see it on Instagram, are people going to know it's mine? Are people going to know it's mine? And are they going to know that this photo was taken in action? You could put the same people in a room with another photographer. Are they going to be able to get that exact same photo? And if the answer is no, that's the photo I'm putting on Instagram. Better believe it. It's really has been that mindset again, because I know my marketing plan and I trust my style and my art that sets me apart. And that's what clients resonate with, right? They see that they kind of, it,
It's what people resonate with in life. Sorry to interrupt you, but that same process is really what I'm digesting out of your story, which is so beautiful.
there's a method to the madness. There really is. And as much as people, myself included, think it all comes together in the end, right? And even though you're just seeing the end result, whether it's the photo that I post on Instagram or when you're talking about my career, there's so much that goes back into that that makes that a significant moment. And it just all ties in together.
No, that's beautiful. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit to the traveling side of things. I know you've certainly incredibly more world traveled than I am in an amazing way. You think it's Uganda, Kenya, Colombia, India, Nepal.
The list goes on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just naming a few, but you really have been to most continents and traveled the
Yeah.
world. I want to focus a little bit on the application of life to traveling and the experiences you get from that stuff. And what I mean by that is a lot of us, and I'm certainly guilty of this, we'll go on an experience of travel and we'll embark on that experience and taking nothing away from the actual in experience time. But when we go back to our quote unquote normal lives, if that's the normal lives we live, traveling the 2 weeks a year or whatever it may be, we really don't actually absorb some of sometimes the most beautiful lessons, or at least I don't always do that, I can admit. So I'm curious with you, being so well traveled and know so free spirited in a beautiful way, what are some of like two or three of the most significant experiences you've gained from traveling that you've applied to your everyday life?
It's a tough one. One thing that I definitely like practice a lot when I'm traveling, what that I don't do at home, is this idea of whatever happens, happens. I tend to overthink a lot of situations. There's a lot of thought that goes into like my everyday life. And I find that when I'm traveling, I really just kind of take the day as it is and just embrace the country and the experience as for what it is and how I can again make it beautiful, right? And because like again, cliche, I love this idea of life and people and like just watching people. I could sit there and watch people all day and I could take my camera or no camera, and when you're in a place like India where there's so many people, you're just like your mind is spinning, right? You're just like, wow, how there's so much. I want to say chaos, but in a very beautiful way. We're in India, okay? There's chaos. There's cows beside me. There's horns going off. There's just so many people everywhere, and it's so easy for your mind to go in so many different directions, which is definitely something that happens every day. But when I'm away and I'm traveling, I'm like trying to like tune these things out, right? And it's like out of all this chaos, where are these pockets of moments that I find the most beautiful, right? And I do always have my camera on me and I'm always looking for those moments and what's happening right in front of me and really looking and not taking in everything. And it's just like appreciating those moments of what's happening around you and toning everything out. And it doesn't matter what's going to happen in 30 minutes. Like what's happening right now that you're going to like see and take in. And again, when I'm in my everyday life, I'm constantly thinking about the next thing I got to do. What do my deadline that I have, the meetings that I have, and like planning my entire summer. And when I'm traveling, it's just, this is my time. This is like my escape. How can I really just make the most of this time? And it becomes very contagious. And like you said, I travel a lot. And I'm always, again, like as much as they say, like traveling, it like brings me into the moment. I'm always thinking about when's my next one. It's like a drug to me, honestly. And that idea of just like loving life and admiring people and wanting to see as most of the world that I can. It's crazy. It's crazy when you go away and you see, especially those that are not as lucky to live in North America and have the resources that we have, and seeing how happy they are with so little, you become very, very appreciative of what you have. And every single time I come home and my mom makes me a home cooked meal, I'm like, wow, just really opens up your eyes. The experience that we had in Guatemala that I really, really always value is that we did this homestay program and we stayed with a family that I would say was probably well off for that country.
Mm.
But still, when I compare what I have at my house and what I had when I stayed with this family, and again, they were just like so loving, so appreciative. And we were there on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Have you seen the movie Coco?
I haven't actually yet.
It's a big celebration where they celebrate those that have passed. And we were there staying with this family on that holiday. And they included us. These people, they did not speak a word of English. We did not speak Spanish. We were like kind of communicating through our phones, but they invited us to have dinner with them, sit at their dining room table. And their dining room table was probably the size of my bathroom, right? Like it was so small. And they just were so grateful to just share this experience with us. They go to the cemetery with the rest of the community and they light candles in the cemetery and honor their loved ones. And I was traveling with my sister at the time, and we get to the gravestone and they're lighting one of the candles. And again, I couldn't speak Spanish, so I couldn't understand what was happening. And their one daughter looked at me and she was said, "This is my sister." And I remember looking at my sister and almost in like tears because I'm just like, wow, just in that moment, what this family like took you in. They've experienced this incredible loss in their life where they lost a daughter or sister, sharing that experience with us. And here I am, again, so grateful for this experience, but also realizing how privileged I am to have a healthy sister, to be traveling with her, to have a large giant dining room table to have dinner on with my family. And it's just those things that happen really stick with you. And it's funny because when you first asked this question, I was like, what experience? Like, what am I going to say? And what comes up in your mind when you start talking and you're like, wow, that was a very beautiful moment and makes you appreciate what you have. And that was like top experience, just life experience. You just appreciate what you have and don't take it for granted because there's people in the world that don't. They have a lot less than you and they are just as happy, just as grateful, and they just want to share that with you, regardless of what walks of life you come from. And it's just incredible. It's incredible.
Interconnectedness, something to do with traveling as well. You actually were already hovering around it in an amazing way there. Interconnectedness, you being at all these different corners of the world and coupling that when we think about not just human beings, nature as well, all the different experiences you've had, and then coupling that again with the discourse, the havoc, the destruction that we have created in this world.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean from a climate change or anything like that standpoint. I do mean that, but also beyond, just interconnectedness. When you think of that word, what comes to mind and what's your view on the interconnectedness of our world?
I think of, I don't even know. When you say interconnectedness, I think a lot about like how I connect my work to my life experiences. And when I say life experience, I mean travel experiences. And this idea of how when I started photography, I was grabbing my camera to shoot, just capture life. And I just wanted to go to these countries and I wanted to take photos just for myself. And I just wanted to remember all the little details about the country and not about, the pretty pictures on Instagram. And then when I think about like this idea of how I capture the world and how I capture a wedding day, it's the same. Everything I learned about capturing a wedding, I've learned from my life experience. And this idea of life is going to happen and I'm going to have to make the most of it and I'm going to have to make it beautiful somehow. And when I say beautiful, like the moments are beautiful, but the composition, the light and everything, like the science of photography, like how do I put all that into like making this moment go from being special to being wow. So that's kind of what I'm drawn to when you're talking about this interconnectedness and like this idea of again being authentic. And it's just let's take away all the BS. Take away all the BS and let's get down to what's really, really happening in front of me and capturing that feeling or that moment that's happening. That's really what my mind is drawn to when you're saying that. And I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking, but that's just like how I keep connecting those two. So I hope that answers that.
Oh, it's fantastic. No, I have a couple final questions for you, Steph. The first one is called wisdom bites. Okay, so hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
Imagine we were talking about the 100 doors earlier. Imagine that up on the wall, sort of in front of you, but not the, instead of the 100 doors, it's somehow the digestion of all the wisdom you've accumulated in your life. You can actually conceptualize and step outside of the human brain and understand it. Now I want you to imagine it's all gone. But from this moment on, you could live by 2 or 3 pieces of wisdom, 2 or 3 wisdom bites that you could have for the rest of your life. Steph, what would your 2 or 3 wisdom bites be?
I think that you can accomplish anything that you put your mind to. I think that is true. I think that there's fire, there's something in this world that lights your soul on fire. And I think you need to run towards that and not run away from it. And I think that there's something notable about bringing out your childhood self, and just there's a fire inside of you and there's something that excites you, and you got to figure out what the heck that is, and you got to hone in on that, and you got to embrace that and crush it from every angle, and you will feel this spirit, this childhood spirit come alive in your soul. And a combination of just like believing yourself and like working hard, like, and I mean work hard for what you want. I think you can accomplish anything, honestly. And not to talk about success in like a monetary way, you're going to feel so fulfilled knowing that you're doing something that you truly love and that you're passionate about. And it has nothing to do with the dollars that roll into your bank account. It's just because you're happy doing what you're doing. And this is what I'm meant to do. It's a great feeling.
Geez, I want to go run a marathon now with that bout of confidence. That's amazing. Can we sum that up as one wisdom bite? Is that
I
one?
think that was like three, like
Yeah, okay.
that was like working hard, like finding that fire inside of you. And like, what was my third one? There was
Listening to
three.
your childhood self.
Yeah, there's three. And just like believing in yourself and putting those three things together.
Oh, that's great. Okay, final question. It's called the 3 R's. Okay, so the 3 reflection questions. In the spirit of this podcast, it's important that we do put ourselves in the shoes of overt reflection. Okay, so the first R, they can be quick answers if you want, or not. The first R is, what have you been reflecting on the most recently?
The thing I've been reflecting on the most recently is this idea of having a better work-life balance. We didn't get too much into this, and I don't want to open up that can of worms, but I have another business with my sister that I run. So I was so scared of, once I took this leap of faith to fail, that I worked myself like a dog because I so badly wanted it to work out, that I really lost sight of this work-life balance. And I was tying my success, in quotes, air quotes, to the dollars in my bank account and not how much I was enjoying life and enjoying what I was doing. So this year is the first year that I've really made better boundaries for myself in terms of my summer and how I'm enjoying that outside of work. And it's simple things like taking Sundays off to spend with my family. Last year, I worked a triple header on my birthday, Kevin. So it's just like things like that. And it's like, okay, like even though I'm not the most birthday person, I could still be spending that time with my family. I could be out kayaking with my dog. I could be going for a hike. Even though it's not about celebrating my birthday, it's just about there's more to life than working. And I'm really trying to find that balance of having a successful business, but also enjoying every minute of it, because in this industry, it's so easy to get burnt out. You can take on so much work, And you don't realize it until you're in the thick of it because I book so far out in advance. So finding a better work-life balance, I think.
So that's what you've been reflecting on the most. Second R2, what are you not reflecting on enough?
Mm. Yeah. Okay. I need to do a better job of managing my finances. And I say this because I recently just paid my taxes, Kevin. And it's one of those things that is always in the back of my head. And I know that I should do a better job of staying on top of this early on in the year and not at the last minute when your taxes are due, right? And you're scrambling to find everything. But as much as I want to be a creative and I want that to be the center of everything I do, you're a business owner. You're a business owner, and there's other responsibilities that come into that. So just whether it's setting a time once a month in my calendar to like go through bank statements and receipts and just being a better business owner so I don't get caught in April being like, shit, I gotta scramble to do my taxes, right? Just as much as you want to be creative, you gotta be a business owner too. And you gotta remember that you gotta have a balance or it's not gonna work out.
It comes on the heels of a lot of things we were saying, that another dance, right? Living in the present moment, but also not forgetting to think about some things in the future proactively,
Yeah.
right? Like those lovely taxes. So, R3, the final question, Steph. What is one thing you think we should all reflect on more to move us forward together as a society?
Honestly, tying back into like the first R, I think once you find something, or it could be something or someone in life that you're really passionate about, I think there's so much that goes into that. I think it makes some people better people. And I think it makes people work hard. And I think it makes people believe in themselves to do great things. And I think that back to this word cliche, I think if you do something that really makes you happy, I think that there'd be a lot more happy people in the world. And I think that there'd be a lot more people that have maybe some more self fulfillment. And just like this idea of like not chasing the rat race and this American dream, even though we live in Canada, like just working for your paycheck. And there's so much that goes into doing something that you love. And I think that there's so much satisfaction that people can get out of that, that is not just monetary. It definitely could be if you do it right. But I think that people are just happier when they do stuff that they love. And I think that portrays into like different aspects of their life.
Steph, how else can we support you in
Like
your
my
businesses and yourself?
photos on Instagram. Kidding. I'm just kidding. No, honestly, Kevin, this was awesome. I feel fired up. I feel fired up. Talking about this makes me feel so alive. And it's crazy to think, because now that I'm 3 years into this, thinking back to like 3 years ago, I'm like, wow, what a different way of life that was. How much I've grown as a person and as a business owner in those 3 years. And just like reflecting back on that. Again, the name of your podcast, I feel like I'm like reborn right now. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I guess we're running that marathon together then. Let's do it. I just want to acknowledge you, Steph, for that story I mentioned at the beginning, that dedication, that pursuance, that passion. There's a lot of people, and I'm an admission of this in myself. When I look at them being successful in their life, I have that innate subconscious jealousy and envy. I don't really have those feelings for you. I'm just honestly so happy and so inspired by the lessons you teach in your story. So I want to just acknowledge you for all that, let alone the actual skills of your art. Your photography is just
Thank you.
out of bounds good. So you just found your bliss, and I'm so happy for you. And thanks for sharing your story today.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you very much for spending time with me on the Reflect On podcast today. If you found this episode enjoyable or inspiring, please share it with those who it may help. and leave a positive review so that we can grow together. Until next time, reflect onward and keep moving forward.